Hey guys, welcome to another presentation. Today's topic is semen retention and spirituality of semen retention. Let's go through the overview. Today's chapters are the biology of God, sexual energy transmutation, the aura of power, the conscious warrior, and review. In the description, the timestamps will be also included, so you can skip to whatever part you find interesting. Let's start with chapter number 1, the biology of God. To me, semen retention practice represents a shift in how one perceives their own biological resources. Most people treat this vital fluid as a biological byproduct or an inconvenient urge to be satisfied. I often think about the sheer amount of energy the human body requires to create a single cell of life. Semen is arguably the most nutrient-dense substance our biology can produce. It is not merely fluid. It is a concentrated cocktail of zinc, calcium, magnesium, vitamin C, phosphorus, and lecithin, all combined with a complex structural blueprint of DNA. When you look at it from this perspective, you realize that every time this energy is released without intention, you are essentially bleeding your most vital micronutrients. Chronic fatigue and lack of drive many men feel today might be directly linked to this constant drainage. By retaining, you are deciding to keep these high-order nutrients within your system, allowing your body to utilize them for internal maintenance rather than external disposal. Beyond the minerals and the hormones, we have to address the fact that this fluid carries a specific energetic charge that is unlikely any other substance in the body. From spiritual perspective, this fluid is essentially a physical manifestation of the creative force of the universe, what many ancient traditions call yin, prana, or ojas. When you hold this energy within, you are accumulating an electromagnetic potential. This is why men on long streaks of retention often describe a feeling of vibrating at a higher level. Every cell in your body has a voltage, and the presence of this concentrated life force seems to act as a battery, raising the overall electrical tension of the human system. When you stop the outward leakage of this energy, your internal aura or biofield begins to expand and strengthen. This is the root of the magnetism we often hear about on semen retention. Your presence becomes heavier, more grounded, and more difficult to ignore because your energetic output has literally increased in magnitude. Spiritually, many cultures view this energy as a ladder. In its raw form, at the base of the spine, it is purely animalistic and procreative. However, when retained and refined, it begins to ascend, moving energy from the survival centers of the brain up towards the higher cognitive and spiritual centers. There is a fascinating biological process called resorption. Our bodies are designed with an incredible survival blueprint. When this essence is not expelled, the body doesn't just let it sit there. Instead, it is broken down and reabsorbed into the lymphatic and circulatory systems. Your body recognizes that it has an abundance of reproductive potential, and since it is being used for procreation, it redirects that intense energy toward your own vitality. It feels as though your body shifts into high-performance mode. When these minerals and hormones are kept in the blood, they support everything from bone density to muscle recovery. as if you are choosing to fuel the engine of your own life rather than throwing the fuel away. One of the most immediate changes I noticed on Semen Retention, and something many others report, is the impact on mental clarity. Science points toward a strong connection between the nutrients found in semen and the health on the nervous system. For example, lecithin and various lipids are crucial for myelin sheath that protects our neurons. Next chapter is called Sexual Energy Transmutation. Chapter 1 was about the fuel. Chapter 2 is about the engine. Having abundance of energy is useless and can be even destructive if you do not know how to direct it. This is where most men fail. They treat abstinence as a feat of willpower, essentially white-knuckling through the urge. But true alchemy is about rerouting it to power a more sophisticated machine. Sexual energy or libido as the fundamental currency of our existence. It is the same raw creative spark that paints a masterpiece, builds a multi-billion-dollar company, or launches a rocket into space. In its pure base form, it seeks reproduction, but in its refined form, it becomes genius. When you feel that intense urge, you are actually experiencing a surge of high-voltage energy. It is a biological prompt that says, create something. If you interpret this prompt only through the lens of physical release, you are essentially short-circuiting your system. You're taking a lightning bolt and grounding it in the mud. To understand transmutation, you must see this energy as a neutral force, a high-frequency vibration that can be flavored by our intention. It is the raw electricity that can either power a light bulb or blow a fuse, depending on the quality of your wiring. There is a vital distinction between suppression and transmutation that we must get clear on. Suppression is the state of war. It is when you try to kill the desire, leading to tension, frustration, and eventually a crash. Transmutation, however, is the art of giving that energy a new job. Think of it like a river. If you try to dam a powerful river without a spillway, the dam will eventually break. But if you build a hydroelectric plant, the pressure of the water becomes the very thing that generates light for the whole city. To transmute sexual energy, you must move the energy from the lower centers into the higher centers. When the urge arises, instead of fighting it, you acknowledge it as a surplus of power. You are essentially feeding your higher goals with the raw power of your lower drives. This is why the most creative and driven individuals in history often possessed a high libido. They simply knew how to channel that fire into their work. If we look back, the masters of history were very well aware of this internal alchemy. Napoleon Hill, after studying over 500 of the world's most successful men for his book Think and Grow Rich, which I highly recommend, dedicated an entire chapter to the mystery of sex transmutation. Hill observed that the men who reached the pinnacle of achievement, men like Thomas Edison, Andrew Carnegie, or Abraham Lincoln, had highly developed sex nature, but had learned the secret of redirecting it. They understood that the energy used for physical intimacy is the exact same energy required for creative imagination. When you study the lives of great polymaths or spiritual masters, you see a recurring pattern of periodized or lifelong retention. They weren't being Puritans, they were being economists of energy. They recognize that a man who is constantly chasing a release is a man who is easily distracted and mentally soft. By holding that fire, they gained a magnetic authority and a mental endurance that allowed them to outthink and outwork everyone around them. They used their sexual energy to magnetize their thoughts, giving their mental assumptions the weight and gravity needed to collapse the quantum field into physical success. The aura of power. If the previous chapters focused on the internal mechanics of the energy, Chapter 3 is where we discuss the external manifestation, how this internal pressure changes the way you look, sound, and command space. When you stop to leak your vital essence, you're shifting your biological and energetic signature. You move from being a background character to becoming the gravitational center of the room. There is a common misconception that semen retention simply raises testosterone. While there is evidence of the temporary spike around day 7, I believe the more significant phenomenon is the upregulation of androgen receptors. Your body is incredibly adaptive. When you retain, your system begins to prioritize the efficiency of its masculine hormones. It's like cleaning the spark plugs in an engine. The fuel, testosterone, burns clearer and more effectively. This manifests in what I call the biological polish. A noticeable increase in muscle density and a reduction in facial puffiness. A deepening of the voice due to thickening of your vocal cords and increased confidence in the throat center. A piercing, steady eye contact that comes from the nervous system that is no longer in the state of post-ejaculatory depletion. We often talk about the vibe or charisma as if they were invisible mysteries, but from the quantum perspective, they are purely electromagnetic. As we discussed in the chapter number 1, The Biology of God, the retention of this concentrated life force increases the electrical tension of your body. This expanded biofield is what people perceive as magnetism. It is heavy, grounded energy that others subconsciously feel before you even speak. Other men perceive a sense of authority and groundedness. You are no longer viewed as a competitor to be pushed aside, but as a person of substance to be respected. Your perception of women also changes. There is a biological sensitivity to high vitality signals. When man is full of his life force, he broadcasts a frequency of health and genetic stability. If your mind is the architect and your assumption is the blueprint, then your sexual energy is the electricity that powers the broadcast. Most people try to manifest from a state of energetic bankruptcy. Their I am statements are weak because their internal battery is at 5%. When you are on a consistent path of retention, your vibrational frequency is naturally higher. Tesla's energy, frequency, and vibration come into play here with intense clarity. By holding your seat, you are increasing your energy, the raw watts, sharpening your frequency, the clarity of the signal, and amplifying your vibration, the impact the signal has on the quantum field. There is another chapter that I call the Conscious Warrior. Entering the path of retention is not about a sudden burst of willpower, it is about a calculated restructuring of your lifestyle. If you treat this as a challenge to be won, you will be eventually burned out. To be a conscious warrior, you must understand the terrain of your own biology and physiology. You're moving from being a slave to your impulses to becoming a commander of your nervous system. The first 90 days are necessary for systemic overhaul. This is a time frame that allows for significant neurobiological and androgenic recalibration. The first 14 days are the phase of the physical shock. In the beginning, the body is confused. You might experience a temporary spike in aggression or flatline where libido seems to vanish. This is where your brain dopamine receptors are starting to heal from the overstimulation of the past. From day 15 to day 45, circa, this is the time when the hunter's edge begins to return, your energy levels stabilize, but the mind will begin to play tricks on you, creating rationalizations for release. This is the test of your identity over your impulse. From the days 46 to 90 days, by this point, the surge of energy becomes your new baseline. The reabsorption we discussed in chapter 1 is in full effect. You aren't fighting the energy anymore. You have started to inhabit it. Your nervous system is now primed for high-level manifestation. When you stop the outward leak of energy, pressure will build. If you don't give that pressure a direction, it will turn into anxiety, insomnia, or irritability. You must have ventils to move the energy from the lower pelvic region up to the rest of the body. I suggest using specific breathing techniques like the microcosmic orbit to consciously pull the energy up the spine. I also recommend to go to gym. High intensity training is the way to burn the raw, aggressive energy into physical structure. It is the most direct way to ground a high voltage charge. Another good habit to have during semen retention is cold exposure. Ice baths or cold showers act as a reset for the nervous system. The cold shock forces the blood and the energy away from the surface and the extremities back into the core, instantly calming the urge and sharpening mental focus. If a man slips up, he feels like he lost everything and falls into a week-long binge of self-sabotage. This is the Newtonian way of thinking, seeing energy as a fixed core rather than fluid process. If you fall once every 30-day streak, you haven't lost 30 days of biological progress. The minerals and neural pathways you built are still largely there. What kills your progress is the shame, which drops your vibration instantly. The practice of semen retention should not be rooted in the hatred of your own sexuality. We are not monks trying to kill our demons. We are alchemists refining our gold. Sexuality is a beautiful, powerful part of being human. Semen retention is simply the choice to use that power for building a legacy rather than a 5-second dopamine hit. True success in semen retention comes when you no longer see it as avoiding something bad, but as choosing something better. Let's review today's presentation. The synergistic review, the power of fullness. Before moving into action, we must revisit the core logic of this practice. Retention is not about deprivation, it's about the strategic accumulation of power. You have recognized that your essence is a concentrated cocktail of DNA, minerals, and lecithin. By retaining, you are ensuring your body has a surplus of the source code needing for high-level repair and cognitive sharpness. You have moved beyond the stoic struggle of suppression. You now understand that the urge is simply a raw electricity. When you feel that heat, you don't fight it, you use it to fuel your creative and physical engine. You understand that your aura of presence is a direct reflection of your internal energy stores. A full system creates a heavy, grounded presence that naturally commands respect and attention from the environment. The daily action plan steps for the first weeks. The first 21 to 90 days are the most critical for recalibrating your nervous system. Here is how to manage the transition. Upon waking, acknowledge your state of vitality. Do not immediately seek external stimulation like phone, coffee, social media, which triggers the same dopamine pathways as a release. Use cold exposure, cold showers, or ice if possible. This acts as a manual reset for the nervous system, pulling energy away from the pelvic region and strengthening your ability to handle internal pressure. You must have a daily high-intensity physical practice, whether it is weightlifting, sprinting, calisthenics, going to gym, whatever. You need a spillway for the increased testosterone and energy levels to prevent them from turning into restlessness and irritability. When you feel the surge of desire, use the 3 minutes of deep, conscious breathing. Visualize the energy moving from the base of the spine up to the brain. You're literally pumping the nutrients and the frequency to your higher centers. This is also called the microcosmic orbit exercise. Final alignment, claiming your life force. The ultimate goal of semen retention is to reach a state where you are no longer a slave to your biological impulses. This is the sovereign protocol. You are the owner of your energy. Every time you choose to retain, you are casting a vote for your future self and your legacy over a momentary lapse in focus. Stop seeing yourself as a man trying to stay on a streak. Start seeing yourself as a man who is simply too focused and too vital to leak his power for nothing. This is the return to your natural state, one of high energy, mental clarity, and physical dominance as a man. By holding your seat, you are holding your ground in the world that wants you depleted, distracted, and weak. Be a man. My name is Filip. Thank you for watching the presentation and enjoy the water from the copper cups. See you next time.